All right, so welcome back if you were here in the morning session. And if you were not, just a quick rundown of what we talked about this morning. We talked about introducing high meaning sight words, which are words that are meaningful and personal to the student as kind of an avenue into initial reading instruction. So we're going to continue from there into where we would go next. So we've already introduced some high meaning sight words, which are words that are personally meaningful to your student. And we've introduced some letter sounds. So just this letter says this sound. So going from there, we will talk about the top two components of a comprehensive reading program. So phonological awareness and phonics. I've had a few questions about readers that are a little bit more advanced and are ready for some more vocabulary, fluency, and comprehension instruction. And I should point out that all three of those things are happening at this early reading stage, like with the reading do's and the story vocabulary boards that we talked about this morning. But if you're looking for information further than that for kids who are a little bit higher level readings, we do offer workshops on that, but if you have specific questions, feel free to email me. And I also want to point out that if you are missing Riley's presentation to come to this one, we will have the slides up on the website next week, so you can check back and get those as well. All right, so the early reading session this morning, well, I told you about that already. So we're going to make sure everyone's clear on the difference between phonological awareness and phonics. That's really important, so that's one of our goals here. And we're going to also look at the difference in development of phonological awareness in learners with Down syndrome and understand the difference between segmenting and blending, which are two skills that are really, really important to reading and spelling, especially at this early age or developmental level. And also talk about what conceptual knowledge is required for success in reading. So that's one of those underlying things that we might not think of because it's not right there in the forefront, but it is super important. So phonological awareness has the big ear there. Phono means sound, logical, word, or spoken. So spoken sound provides no visuals, and this is important to consider when we think about the profile of a learner with Down syndrome. Most of our learners with Down syndrome are visual learners and have auditory processing difficulties. Phonological awareness skills and activities may not be easy or come naturally. So anyone who teaches in an early reading or early grade, kindergarten, grade 1, knows that a lot of these kids either come with or quickly develop phonological awareness skills, and it's a great, it's important for early reading and for learning phonics. So in typically developing children, phonological awareness is a key indicator of later reading success. Phonological and phonemic awareness contribute to a student's success with learning phonics. And so phonemic awareness, under the umbrella of phonological awareness, is just talking about the smallest units of sound. So the individual phonemes. There's 44 in the English language, even though we only have 26 letters. Confusing already. The first phonemes that a reader learns are usually the sounds attached to a single letter. Even this can be complicated because vowels have 2 sounds each. C and G have 2 sounds each. You can see where we're going with this. It's complicated stuff. So, what can we do? Here's just a rundown of kind of the simplest to more difficult phonological awareness skills that you'll see developing in typically developing learners. So being able to tell that there's a certain number of words in the sentence. Today is my birthday. Rhyming, like all the nursery rhymes and the songs that we sing with little kids, it comes quite naturally that these kids can pick this up and even supply new rhymes. Also picking out sounds, phoneme discrimination. So this is a list. Some of these things are more difficult than others for our learners with Down syndrome, but all of them can be quite difficult because because they are just auditory. So now that you know the learner profile and the strengths and challenges associated with students with Down syndrome, you can probably pick out some of the most difficult ones already. So anyone want to try that? What do you think would be the trickiest of these skills to pick up for a learner with Down syndrome?
Sometimes rhyme because they can't hear.
Exactly. Rhyme we found is the most difficult one. So you'll find out this story later. Thanks for participating. I have to spice it up a little bit at the end of the day. Everyone's getting tired. And, yeah. Yes, exactly. Rhyming, and to be honest, we don't spend a lot of time really focusing on that skill. It is always talked about as being really important for typical learners, but it is so tricky. And it doesn't mean that our kids can't rhyme, it just means that it's really hard and some of us can be better focused into other skills. Okay, so segmenting is separating a whole word into its individual parts. So when we're talking about phonological, just the sound, that's orally being able to say, oh, this is the word cat, it has the sounds act, without seeing any letters. When we're talking about, we need to be able to do this before we're able to spell. So if someone tells you to spell the word cat, you can't, unless it's from memory, you need to be able to break it up into its individual parts. This oral segmenting is really challenging for our learners, and we'll talk soon about how we address these challenges. The other word that we'll use a lot today is blending, so putting the sounds we hear together to form a word. This can also be challenging for our learners because it requires them to use their working memory to remember all three sounds, and then to do something with them, blend them, and then to attach meaning to the word they formed. So it's more than what it looks like on the surface. Most typically developing children easily develop phonological awareness. They pick up rhyming songs, nursery rhymes that we talked about just a minute ago, but ours do not always make this connection. However, there are a few studies that have shown that learners with Down syndrome may learn phonological awareness or pick up these skills as a result of learning to read. So as a result of learning sight words and as a result of learning letter sounds and phonics. Which makes sense, because we know that what our learners are? Visual. Everyone answered. That was awesome. Sorry. But yes, they're visual. They need to have that input. This also kind of goes along with the underlying concepts, which we'll talk about soon. Okay, so the other factors that make phonological awareness difficult is this thing that Susan talked about this morning, is the fluctuating hearing loss throughout life, and especially at key developmental stages. So if they are experiencing this fluctuating hearing loss right at the time when you're hearing all these nursery rhymes and singing all these little songs, they're missing that part. And then they get to kindergarten and we're not doing it as much anymore. So they haven't had the amount of exposure to those types of activities in a meaningful way that's working for them as other typically developing children. So this can make it difficult to discriminate between sounds, especially vowel sounds, the hearing loss. Participating in the long list of phonological awareness activities I shared with you earlier can be more challenging and less beneficial when the sounds they are hearing are not accurate. So even if they're not working, and also maybe not helping at all, really. We're just wasting time that it's not helping them. So deficits in auditory processing make it difficult for students to sequence, blend, and discriminate between sounds. This doesn't mean they're not hearing the sounds, but they're processing them differently. So that's really important. So we've developed an informal assessment to use in our program, which looks at which skills each student is coming to the program with and what skills they acquire as they participate. We're finding that the standardized assessments that we're using, we're just not capturing the growth that we were seeing in our students as they received reading instruction. We broke down many of the literacy skills that are typically assessed when looking at literacy and reading ability so that we could see what each student was gaining by participating in the program. So this slide shows how we've broken down phonological awareness into the skills that we have found to be most transferable to learning how to read and spell phonetically, and those that we have noticed to need more practice. So not all of the skills are listed here. Some of these skills can be broken down even further if a particular student requires more support. Some supports are built in based on the learner profile. For example, the one that says, choose pictures of objects beginning with a given sound. This type of activity is often done without any pictures. So you might say, tell me a word that starts like and that's it. So for our learners, that added support of giving them 3 pictures, is it mom or dog or cat, gives them that extra support that they need to say, oh, okay, so my choices are this. This one starts like So it's because it's pretty difficult to provide the beginning sound of a word that you can't see, or so yeah, thinking about another phonological awareness activity, like what sound do you hear at the beginning of cat? If you can't remember the word that I just said that I'm asking for the beginning sound for, then it's really hard to do that task. So you might be confused and think that they don't know beginning sounds, but really it is that memory constraint that's causing that problem. So giving them the visual support will help with that. So one of the skills that we work on is simply participating in the activities by listening, imitating, using hand over hand. We first work on all the skills listed by modeling and getting students to engage with the activity, then work with support, and finally do the skill independently. So I like the words modeling, guided practice, and independent application, but I know that there's lots of different ways of referring to those stages. There's another one up there. It says blend sounds given verbally to identify a CVC consonant, vowel, consonant word. So I just put out 2 to 3 picture cards, and say, what word am I saying? And just say the 3 sounds, d, a, g. And they need to hold the 3 sounds, blend them together, and then synthesize the sound into a word to make meaning, to identify the word as dog, so they can choose the correct picture. That's already a lot. So we might need to think about how we can break that down even further. But again, if you think about it without pictures, that is a lot more difficult. So they're kind of choosing from all the words available in the world, as opposed to just the 3 choices that you have in front of them. So many other challenges come into play when we ask this of our learners. For example, difficulty with retrieval of information, so that all the other words in the world are available, but we might not be able to retrieve that exact one. So eventually, as they get better at the skill of blending sounds, they'll be able to do this. But as they're learning, the pictures serve as a support so that they can focus on acquiring the new skill of blending. So that's what we're really asking them to do, is do the blending, not to do that retrieval work that's so difficult. One there that says identify sound positions. This skill requires students to identify a sound in a target position. For example, what sound do you hear at the end of blank? This is a very important skill because it will directly transfer to spelling. However, there are a number of things that need to be developed before that student is able to just spell a word. First, notice that many of these activities require conceptual knowledge. That's what we said I would talk about, that underlying concept of beginning, middle, and end, which needs to be explicitly taught in order for them to understand what you're asking them to do in this task. So one of the things we use is the train. And even before we go to the 3 boxes at the end where we might put letters, we'll just talk about those words out of context of reading. So often we'll take little characters that they are their high interest, so they're Paw Patrol dogs, and say, put Rubble at the beginning of the train, put him in the middle, put him at the end. Oh, where is he now? So really developing that concept before being asked to then layer it on top of, tell me a sound that is at the beginning of the word. So that's one of the concepts we found is like really important to really solidify before we get to the reading. So someone already mentioned that rhyming is the last skill there, and I did say that it's especially difficult and not, and wanted to mention that it's not that they can't rhyme or they don't hear the rhyme, but it doesn't come naturally and it's not really understood in the same way. So one way that you can approach rhyme is by using those word families where they can visually see the text and see that, oh, this pattern is the same, that's why they rhyme. So it's a bit of a concept thing as well. So here's a couple of activities that I'll show you that our friend Brody from the last video there, grocery shopping guy, is just participating. We're brand new to this skill. So he's just participating in an activity where he's segmenting syllables in a word. And we use this little B because, as we know, our students are visual and they like routine. So having this just little indicator that this is the activity we're going to do next, we bring out the B, we sing the song, they know what to expect. They know what they need to do, they know that they are good at it already, or that they are at least familiar with it. So having little props like that are really helpful for that. And they make it more fun.
Bee, bee, bumblebee, can you clap the word for me? Ready? Put your bee down. Clap, monkey. Your turn. Monkey. Good job. Let's tap it on the table.
So yeah, so I just noticed that I can't even remember the exact point we were at with this. I think that we had done the Post-its a lot more, and I was trying to get him to do it with just the clapping, but then I could see that he still needed that other support of having the visual down on the desk, so we went back to doing it with the Post-its. But it's always good to keep assessing. Yeah, the picture that I showed him is a monkey. Yeah, so we've got, we just have like random pictures. No, the bumblebee is just fun. Yeah, and to let him know what's happening.
I about the letter B, but no, that's just we're going to do a sing-song
about clapping syllables. Exactly. Yeah, perfect. Good question. I know it's like, why the B? But it just works. It works so well, I know. So here's another phonological awareness that I mentioned, or activity that I mentioned earlier. Lucas is working on hearing the sounds and blending them to identify the words, so I call it Guess That Word. It's going to transfer to using phonics to decode words when he's reading. So just remember, these two are pure phonological awareness activities, no text involved.
What's my word? K-a-p. Pan. Oh, let's listen again. Ready? K-a-p. Good job. Here's a wig. What's my word? B-ag. Good job. There's a hen. What's my word? P-an. P-an. Good job. There's a jet. What's my word? Wig. Oh.
Whoops, told him the word. But you could see there too, I think in the beginning one, or the second one with bag, he wasn't doing the blending. He was using his understanding of beginning sounds to pick it out even before I finished the word. So if you get to that point, then you just need to adjust a little bit, right? Put down all words that start with the same letter, so that he has to go past that skill that he has mastered and work on the real skill that you're trying to get him to do.
B.
And this one shows Leo segmenting CBC words. There's your stretchy snake coming into play. The stretchy snake is to help him visualize what's happening to the word when you stretch it out or segment it. He still needs some practice to be independent with the skill, but he's definitely demonstrating that he understands that words are made up of individual sounds.
Nuts.
Good job. Can you pick a new word? Fin. Great work. How about one more? 10. One more time. Stretch it out. Ready? Stretch it out. 10. Great work.
So cute. So we had to wash that after he had it up his nose, but that's okay. Okay, so I already mentioned the train and how important it is. So just a little reminder, and there is Brody using his Paw Patrol characters to demonstrate his understanding of the words before he's ready to start using that vocabulary or that language in doing a reading task. Okay, so when we're working on sound positions, just a couple little tips, and we'll talk more about it as well. Work on identifying sounds in the initial position first, it's the easiest, and then the final position, and then that medial position for two reasons. It's kind of stuck in the middle and gets forgotten easier, and also it's a vowel, so they're really hard to discriminate. So get them really confident and successful with the first two, the beginning and the ending sound, and then add in that medial sound. And then also when you're blending, if three sounds are too many, try two sounds. So often we'll do onset and rhyme with word families. So k, at, cat, they only have to hold two pieces of information in their working memory to blend those together. But we have found with some kids it's actually more useful to do beginning and then an ending. So like p, I, or cat, because it's already starting to be blended for them. So it's easier to add on the end sound and have the bigger chunk first. Just a little aside on the word pie there. It looks like a three-letter word, but it's only two sounds. So when you're doing a phonological awareness activity, you're focused on the sounds only. So even if it had, 5 letters like cheese, it's still only 3 sounds. Ch, e, z. So keep that in mind when you're working on these types of things. Okay, so then phonics is the method of instruction that teaches the relationships between the letters, so what you see, and the sounds, so what you hear. So remember that we started with sight words. We started so that students already have some understanding of what the letters are used for, of letter sound correspondence for some letters, because we started talking about letter sounds. And then they can specifically put that knowledge of letter sounds along with their high meaning words that they've learned. So it's a good place to start. Thinking about some phonics skills and what the breakdown can be. I'd mentioned that this morning, but if you weren't in there, just trying to think about a skill in all its tiny little parts really helps to notice the gains and also to break it down to help them build on each skill before they can get to that bigger skill. So even just identifying a letter sound, you can first have them imitating, then have them selecting with a prompt like the sign, then select it without the prompt. So these are all just building. They're just getting better and better at this skill, and they're showing that they are making gains here. Then we would do providing the sound with a prompt, like what does C say, or showing them the letter C more likely, but also giving them the sign. That they might need that, and they might not need all of these steps either. And then we would move to providing the sound without that prompt, and always working on developing fluency. So after they've been able to do all of these things, and now they're able to just tell you what a C says, make sure it's happening quickly and in different situations, and being able to generalize there. And then also working on discriminating between similar sounds before we even get to spelling or reading. Okay, so segmenting, when it is referring to phonics, has the text there. So we talked about oral segmenting, which is a phonological awareness skill. This is something that most kids need to be able to do before we're able to spell. Well, all kids need to be able to do. But with our guys, we might need them to see the text first before they're able to then go and do it without it. Okay, so what does segmenting look like, broken down into all the little steps? And also just a little reminder in the corner there, at each of these stages, we want to provide modeling, guided practice, and independent application of the skill. So if the task is spelling CVC words, they need to be able to segment CVC words. So that oral blending that Leo was doing with the snake. But to get there, we might have to do some things first. So the first thing that they might try is selecting the letters to represent the phoneme. So you might be segmenting it for them, and they're just picking what letter you're saying. And not the whole word yet. So maybe just the beginning sound for a while, and then the final sound for a while, and then the medial sound for a while. And then all three sounds with only the three letters that you could possibly need. And then all three sounds with a couple extra consonants, and then all three sounds with an extra vowel too. And then maybe from the whole alphabet if we get there, or if they're not writing on their own, just to be able to do that. So does that make sense, being able to just break it down and say, like, no, they can't do this yet. They can't spell a CVC word, but maybe we can do these things. Yeah. Sorry, I did mention it briefly, but I will. Yeah, so it just means a consonant. The word is made up of consonant, vowel, consonant. So cat, dog, van, man, all those types of words. Thank you for asking that, actually. Okay. So blending, when we're talking about phonics, again, has the text along with it, but putting the sounds together to make meaning. So if we think of a really seemingly simple phonics skill, let's just read that word. It's just, it's just cat. Like, you can read that. Think about what's going on there. First, we have to know all the sounds. We have to know that those sounds correspond with those letters always. We have to be able to say the sounds. We have to blend the sounds together. So we talked about doing that either with two sounds and a final sound, or onset and rhyme, one sound and then the ending, and then going from there into being able to have all three sounds separately and blend them together. And then we also need to make meaning out of that. So there's a lot going on there. So you might find that your student gets stuck at one of those stages for a while, or that they just need a little more practice there, and then the other ones come more quickly. It's really very individual, but just being aware that there are so many things going on is helpful, I think. Okay. So this was that study that we talked about, developing phonological awareness through phonics. I love that picture, so I had to put it in twice. Like, oh, we've learned that kids develop their phonological awareness as a result of learning how to read. So for this reason, we use phonics to teach phonological awareness. So here's an example of using visual cues and text to eventually get them to the place where they can segment this word, blend this word independently. So we would say k, a, t with the letters. So that's something you would do normally with phonics. Just now we would do it first. So when you saw Leo segmenting the words with this stretchy snake, that wasn't what he did first. That's where he got to from doing things like this first, where he understood what was happening with that word when he broke it into the